the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brooks Show.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Yaron Brooks Show on this Tuesday evening, night here. It's already 8 p.m. Puerto Rico time. It is the 1st of February. Wow. January went like that. It just went like that. It was, in many respects, a phenomenal month. So I'm happy with January. Very happy with January. Very, very happy with January. Anyway, I'm happy with January. The show did really well in January. We brought in a good amount of money on Super Chat. Action Jackson invented this new kind of video that we're releasing, like a 1-minute video, just clips out of different stuff that I've done. That's exactly 1 minute. So I guess it fits in TikTok. That has the format of an iPhone that sits in YouTube Shorts. And one of those videos has gone like that. Like in less than a month, we've gotten 120,000 views on this video. As a consequence of that, we've got hundreds of people subscribing to the Yaron Brooks Show. So maybe some of you have come from that video. Oh my God, best friend Hank is here. And he can't stand the new video clips. They're not for you, best friend Hank. You should be ecstatic by the fact that we've got hundreds of new people. It's great. We haven't seen an increase in subscribers this fast in a long, long time. That's part of the good news in January. My fund did phenomenally well in January, best month we've ever had. Just the hedge fund, things went really, really well. I think we're going to be at 29,000 within days, and we'll be at 30,000 potentially if this continues by the end of the month, which is insane. At the latest, maybe by the end of March. So yeah, I mean, this is the kind of exponential growth we've been waiting for. It's not quite at the level of we're going to make 1 million subscribers soon, but it's exciting. It's exciting. It's a short videos, no question. It's just short videos. YouTube tells me from where they're subscribing. Lex is helping. We're up to 350,000, I think, views on the Lex Friedman show. So that's definitely part of it. Also, the show I did 2 days ago on Jordan Peterson is doing really, really well. The short video we put out, me criticizing Jordan Peterson's perspective on capitalism, is doing really, really well. So the videos all doing well. The only videos that don't do well, the ones where I talk about something positive, the ones where I'm conveying some positive information or talking about more philosophical issues or Yaron Rules for Life and things like that. Those don't do well, but that's fine. We can afford to do those because those do well financially. We can also afford to do those, but it's great. It's great to see new subscribers. It's great that everything is kind of going up. So, yeah, I'm excited. Tomorrow's Ayn Rand's birthday. She would be, I haven't done the math, but she was born in 1905, so she would be 117, right? 117 today. She was born 117 years ago. So many people I know celebrate Ayn Rand's birthday. So tomorrow's Rand's Day to be celebrated. So that's excellent. And yeah, and February's here, and March I'm planning to start traveling. So a lot of traveling. So Europeans out there, you're going to see me in March, hopefully. The big breaking news is our big conference in Europe is going to be in London this year. London, we haven't had one in a couple of years. Did we do one in 2020? I think I can't remember. I think we canceled, or did we do one in 2020 in February? I think in Poland. And then 2021, we had none. And then 2022 is in London. It's in the first weekend in April. And it's going to be exciting. I am coming to Paris. I should be in Paris on March. I don't have the calendar inside my head, but like 13th, 14th, I'm speaking at a university outside of Paris, and maybe we can organize a talk inside Paris as well. But I will be coming to Paris. Kiev, I'm holding off on Kiev. I think you know why. But I plan to be in Kiev in late April. So Kiev, late April, just before Tbilisi, which will be on April 30th, I think it is. And May 1st, I'll be in Tbilisi. I'll be in generally in Eastern Europe in late April, starting with Prague and Budapest. We'll go see Viktor Orban. We'll go say hello to Viktor Orban. Maybe I'll do my show on Viktor Orban from Budapest. That would be cool. So full schedule. As I know more, I will let you guys know. Might be doing an event in New York City later this month in February. I'll let you know about that one once we have everything lined up. But that could be exciting. Kind of a high-priced event, so that you'll have to pay to get in. But that'll be fun and interesting. We'll try it out, see if it works. Anyway, a lot of stuff happening. I'm excited about it, and I'm excited to get back to normal, which is the first topic I want to talk about, which is like COVID back to normal, and then we'll talk about why free markets are losing, the ideas of free markets are losing, and why we've got this uptick. I think a significant uptick, and a significant uptick in statism, in statist ideas, and statist intellectuals, and statist ideas and intellectual popularity is, and it's global. It's everywhere. So it's scary, and we'll talk about why that is happening. Kind of a theme that we're going to keep returning back to. All right. In the meantime, I want to remind you, and Michael Sanders already knows this because he's like flooding me with $20 questions, which is great. That Super Chat is open. For those of you new to the Yaron Brook Show, this is a great way while you're listening live to support the show, but also to ask questions and get and be able to be able to interact and ask whatever questions you want. You can ask questions for $1. You can ask questions for a few $100s. We've had people jump in here with $500. So it's value for value. Hopefully you get value from the show. One way you can express your appreciation for that value and is the way Stephen just did by supporting the show. You can just support the show without even asking a question like Stephen just did. So thank you, Stephen. At whatever level you can, at whatever level you think the show is worth to your life, at whatever level you can afford. Of course, we have a goal every day, every show, which is $600, still $600. We'll probably increase it later this year, make it $750 at some point. But let's keep. I think we only missed the $600 goal once in all of January, which is just spectacular. And let's see if we can continue that trend into February, and keep hitting that $600 goal pretty much every single time. So. Thank you, guys. Thanks for all the support. And, of course, those of you, again, who are new, please like the show before you leave. And don't forget, you can support the show on a kind of a regular basis, on a monthly basis, through Patreon or through Subscribestar. You just put in Yaron Brook Show. Or you can do it on the Yaron Brook Show website, yaronbrookshow.com/support. And in many ways, that's the most valuable means of supporting the show. Because it's the most predictable and I can plan around it, but it's all that support that you guys provide is what makes it possible for me to do everything that I do, including the travel, the debates, the lectures, and 4 shows a week, that have typically gone 2 hours each. I mean, once in a while they're an hour and a half, but usually 2 hours each. So we're talking about 8 hours of content a week. just on the Iran Book Show, and that's a lot. And then, of course, all the work that Action Jackson puts in to splice them up and to make those little videos that Best Friend Hank does not like. And he doesn't have to watch them either. And there's Troy from Australia who once in a while pops in. It's great to see you. Thank you. Really, really appreciate that. You just made Catherine's job a lot easier. Troy just contributed 500 Australian dollars. So thank you, Troy. And I hope you're doing okay in Australia. We keep hearing horror stories about the COVID response in Australia. Okay, so let's jump in. News today out of Denmark. The news today out of Denmark is that Denmark is suspending over the next few weeks all COVID restrictions. They don't consider COVID an issue anymore. They don't consider it a problem anymore. And they're basically no masks, no travel restrictions, no vaccine mandates. They are just eliminating it all and opening it up Denmark completely. I mean, there are days where I think maybe Bernie Sanders was right. Maybe Scandinavia is the place to be. Sweden hasn't had restrictions from the beginning. It still screwed up elements of its response to COVID, but it hasn't had restrictions from the beginning. So Sweden got it right in the beginning. Denmark, while it had pretty stringent lockups early on, has been fairly open since then, and now is going full open. It's joining the UK in that, and I think Spain is also jumping in on that. This is at the same time as Germany has just announced basically a vaccine mandate nationwide, where other countries like France and other places are intensifying the requirements, more vaccine mandates, more restrictions, restrictions on people's movements, restrictions on travel. So it's great to see the Scandinavian countries have an appreciation for freedom, an appreciation for individual liberty, and letting people live. So I have to talk to Nikos about I should go to Denmark. I should try to go and speak in Sweden and Denmark, given their performance in COVID. Maybe there's an audience there. Who knows? So this is great. I think Austria, Germany are pretty rigid and locked down. I'm planning to give a talk in Berlin. I'm planning a talk in Vienna. Who knows if I'll be able to go to either one of those places. We'll see. But I love Copenhagen. Copenhagen is one of my favorite cities in the world, and Denmark is just a wonderful country. It's got some problems, but it's generally a wonderful country. And as problems go in the world, it has less than most countries do. So so there's opening up, and it's time. It's well past time. It's way past time that we just did away with all these restrictions. Let's just drop them all. I mean, it's ridiculous to me that UK, London, is going to be open now, and the California is still locked down. That the UK is completely open, and Puerto Rico, you have to get a test to fly in. Although I think that's going away. I think Puerto Rico is starting to open up as well. California is still like it's still pretending it's April of 2020. And people are still afraid. Mask mandates everywhere. It's just ridiculous. They should just drop everything immediately. The emergency is over. If there was any emergency excuse for some of the stuff they were doing, it's over. It's gone. It was gone a long time ago, but it's certainly over and gone now. So let us live freely, right? We're living today, but the hassle is horrific. So hopefully we're at the end of the hassle. Hopefully things are opening up. Hopefully we can get back to normal life really, really quickly here, and maybe Denmark, in that sense, can lead the world. Another piece of good news just occurred to me. This is out of all places. You'll be surprised, but good news out of California. The good news out of California is that that they were going to pass a bill to institute single-payer universal health care in California. In other words, California was going to unilaterally socialize medicine in the entire state. And this is a state where the governor is Democratic, where they have supermajorities in both the House and the Senate in the California legislature. So, you know, if the Democrats were serious, if the Democrats were committed to single-payer health care, if the Democrats were committed to the general agenda, if they were committed to socializing everything in our lives, it could have passed, it would have passed. But they're not. Luckily for all of us, the Democrats are not actually as nasty and evil as what they say they are. They're actually just more practical than that. And they know they're trying to socialize healthcare in California would bankrupt the state. They know they're trying to socialize healthcare in California would probably be the single thing that turned California Republican. That and just opening up the California border would probably be those two things. It would piss off Californians so much that it would turn the state into a Republican state. And they won't even bring it to a vote. They have a supermajority. They won't even bring it to a vote on the floor of the House of Representatives in the state of California. Basically, single-payer, socialized health care, universal health care in California is dead. So a victory, not for free markets, not for reason, not for individualism, just for political practicality. You know, even the Democrats realize that their position on health care is not a winning position, it is a losing position, and they're just not willing yet to commit suicide. You know, maybe at some point in the future, but not quite yet willing to commit suicide. Ryan, thank you. I appreciate that, and I really do hope popularity is going to explode. We will see. We will see. Good month so far, and today looked like a good day on all that. I'm a numbers guy. I love looking at graphs. I monitor like views and subscribers and all this stuff on my show every single day. I'm probably a little addicted to it, and YouTube gives you a gazillion parameters and stuff you can play around with. So it's useless. I spend way too much time looking at those things. But yes, overall, this is good. The left is not committed to its leftist ideology, which is good. All right. So, as you know, I've been reading a lot of the new right, kind of what the new right is writing. We know kind of the dominance of the left. You know how big of a critic I was of Donald Trump. And yet Donald Trump was, and to some extent is still quite popular. And one of the things that is really striking, and I've talked about this before, and we'll probably be talking about this for years to come, is the fact that the popular ideas out there, the anti-free market ideas, the anti-free market ideas are super popular out there. They're super popular out there, not just with the left. That's kind of obvious and that's expected, and we all know that. But it's actually the case that the free market ideas are not popular with the right either. You see, they used to be, I'd say until 2016 certainly, and you know, going back to the 1950s, there was this coalition on the right. It was called diffusionism. It was conservatives of different type fused together, or didn't really fuse, but coalesce together, lobby together, work together, basically to defeat the left, to defeat communism, to defeat the left, and to bolster America. And even though they disagreed on certain elements, they agreed on enough that they could move the project forward. And really, this is what Buckley tried to do. And it was a fusionism, or an attempt to assemble, attempt to create a coalition around intellectuals and thinkers who are anti-communist, but might be fairly left on a lot of other things, very mixed economy, fairly left on social issues, but very anti-communist, and maybe very pro-American. The neocons were like this. Remember, the neocons started out as Trotskyites. They started out as communists. And then at some point, as Irving Kristol used to say, Irving Kristol, the founder of the neocon movement, used to say they were mugged by reality. That is, they saw that leftism, communism, just didn't work. It was impractical. It was not a good idea. And they basically became American patriots and anti-communists. And they had a little bit of sympathy towards markets. But Irving Kristol wrote a famous book called 2 Cheers for Capitalism. And they gave it 2 cheers, right? Actually, they don't write for the Dispatch, Scott. Now they write for Commentary Magazine. Commentary Magazine is still the neocon magazine. These are people who didn't care that much about social issues. They're probably, a bunch of them are atheists. Most of them are Jewish. They, again, formed a coalition with the religious right. We'll get to them in a minute. But basically, they were secular. They were pro a lot of the left's social agenda. They were somewhat pro-capitalism, a little bit, but they were really hardcore on foreign policy, on pro-America, anti-communist, and bringing democracy to the world. That's one leg of the stool, if you will. No, Kissinger was not one of them. Another leg of the stool was, and this is what the conservative movement was, starting in the late 1950s on, until I think 2016. The second leg of the stool was the social conservatives, the religious right, the people who, what they really cared about, what they really at the end of the day cared about was religious tradition, making sure, anti-abortion, prayer in school, but also things like respect for the flag. These are not defenders of free speech. They would be fine with laws against blasphemy. No, this isn't Barry Goldwater at all. This is more of the of the evangelical right, of the moral majority, of people like Rick Santorum and Mike Huckabee. Although Rick Santorum and Mike Huckabee give again much more on the capitalist side than let's say the Pat Buchanans of the world, who never liked capitalism, and was on the religious right. So you see, it's complicated. So this is the family values, exactly, family values crowd, and all of that. So you had that's a third leg of the stool, right? So you had the neoconservatives. You had second leg of the stool. So you had the neoconservatives. You have the religious right. Then you have what they call libertarians, right? The ones who really don't care about anything. What they really care is about free markets. They care about economic liberty, right? And that's the primary thing that they think is important. Jonathan, thank you. Really appreciate the support. That's what they think. And those are the three legs of the stool. All they care about is free markets. Now, all of them kind of gave lip service to the other people's agenda, right? The neocons gave lip service to the social conservatives. The social conservatives gave lip service to the pro-free markets. The pro-free markets gave lip service to the neocons on foreign policy. And given that there was this big threat, the Soviet threat out there, they all kind of agreed to get along and do their thing and not worry about it too much, right? National Security Wing is probably the neocons. National Security Wing would primarily be the neocons. And then there was this other wing in the Republican Party, which you'd call the populist wing, which was kind of part of the conservative movement, but it was always a minority. It was always a small piece of it, never taken too seriously, never really had a presidential candidate. Call it the populist wing of the conservative movement, and that would be Pat Buchanan. And Pat Buchanan would be the dominant voice there. There were others, and that would be a real nativism, so an anti-neocon, anti-interventionist, bring democracy to the world in any kind of sense, and build the walls, stop trade. So there's always been this element of this populism within the Republican establishment, or within kind of the conservative movement. This very populist agenda, but it was not part of the three-legged stool. It was not part of what the core of conservatism was, and it was not where most voters were. Most voters on the right were in one of those three positions, and that really dominated the discussion in the right for a very long time. And I think it's always been the case, for reasons I'll talk about in a little bit, that it's the, quote, libertarians that always garnered the least support among all these different groups. That there were more religious conservatives, more neocons, and more others than there were free market advocates, really people passionate about the free markets. The free markets was always tagged on. It was tagged on to foreign policy. It was tagged on to social conservatism. For almost nobody in the conservative movement, and I go down back to Buckley, and maybe the exception here is Barry Goldwater. Barry Goldwater is the only representative, I think, of this free market side of the conservative movement that ever made it to the presidency and ran on that as an agenda. He still catered to the social conservatives. He still catered to the other elements, but mostly he was a free market guy. And remember what happened to Barry Goldwater in the election. So Barry Goldwater was the most free market presidential candidate I think the Republicans have ever had, certainly in the 20th century. Well, with the exception of Coolidge, right? What happened to Goldwater? He lost in a landslide. He lost in a landslide. There's just no support for that. And of course, Ronald Reagan learned from that. And even though Ronald Reagan's instinct might have been to run as kind of a Barry Goldwater, run on economic issues, run on economic liberty, he didn't. He did some. But a lot of what he ran on was he made sure the socially conservative stuff. Because it was the socially conservative element that made it possible for him really to win. It was the evangelicals flipping from 1976 to 1980, flipping from support of Jimmy Carter to support of Ronald Reagan, that won the presidency for Reagan. Thatcher in the UK is very different, Tazy. UK has a very different dynamic than the United States. But even in the UK, you're seeing a real shift, right? You're seeing populism again rise up in the UK with a complete decline in economic freedom. And even Margaret Thatcher. Okay, so let's get to Margaret Thatcher, because Margaret Thatcher is a good example as well. Actually, Margaret Thatcher is the same as what I'm saying. Margaret Thatcher ran, I think she won it first time in 1977. She basically ran an anti-left campaign. She ran against Labour. And people had had it with Labour. They were fed up with Labour. And she spent the first administration, the first period being prime minister, fighting and not getting much of her agenda done and being unbelievably unpopular. Until what? Until what? See, free markets are always unpopular, or have been in the last 50 years, unpopular. What tipped it for Margaret Thatcher? What made Margaret Thatcher popular? So popular that she could get away with free market stuff. What tipped it was the Falkland War. People forget about the war between UK, the United Kingdom, and Argentina over a couple of dinky little islands off the coast of Argentina in the Atlantic Ocean, South Atlantic Ocean, that the Argentinian claimed and invaded, and the British Navy went there and whipped the Argentinians, and Margaret Thatcher's approval ratings went through the roof. And only then, Only when she established herself as a foreign policy hawk defending the British crown and defending the pride of the Brits could she get away with her market reforms. Market reforms are incredibly unpopular and have been. Now, there's a brief period post-Thatcher and post-Reagan where it seemed like the world was shifting post-fall of the Berlin Wall, where people were embracing market ideas and there seemed to be some energy around it. But nothing politically in the West really happened. It was all little things, incremental things, nothing really huge, right? But the fact is that the libertarian leg of the stool that held up, that defined conservatism, was always the stepchild, was never the core, was never what made them popular, was never what gave them political power. And therefore was the most neglected part. It was the one least talked about. And most importantly, and we'll keep returning to this, most importantly, it's the one that people are least passionate about. People are very passionate about their social ideas. Pro and anti-abortion, pro or anti-religion, pro or anti-gay marriage. The social issues bring out a certain moral fire. People are very, very passionate about foreign policy, about being patriotic and American identity, and the same thing again with Margaret Thatcher and beating Argentina in the Falklands. But on the right, you get zero passion around economics. The passion around economics all comes from the left. Because on economics, the left has the moral high ground and everybody knows it, and the right is just trying to catch up. And the right is just talking economics. And the right is just showing the numbers. And the moral passion is just not there. And as a consequence, all the energy and the passion and the real grassroots was all around the social conservatism, the Christian right, and the foreign policy stuff. And then the foreign policy stuff was completely destroyed by George W. Bush's disastrous wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And in a sense, the one leg of the stool went away because, I mean, we're not going to bring democracy to the world. Nobody wants to do it anymore. It failed dramatically. Nobody has passion around that. What does America really stand for, given what it's done in the Middle East? And everybody just, it's just not a political agenda. Nobody cares about it. Get out of everything. So with the failure of the Bush administration post 9/11, that leg of the stool almost went away. The neocons got completely discredited. The whole foreign policy establishment on the right got completely discredited. So now you've got two legs of the stool left. You've got the religious conservatives, and you've got the so-called free market libertarian wing. Financial crisis destroyed the free market libertarian wing. Republicans who used to believe in free markets suddenly accepted completely the rhetoric that the market has caused the financial crisis, that this is what happened when you give the market too much, that it was all about Wall Street greed, that Wall Street was anti-Main Street, that inequality was an issue, that inequality was a problem. And basically the financial crisis destroyed and dissipated and reduced the strength and the ability to stand up and the ability to defend the free market wing. And that wing was always weak, was never strong. They never had a moral defense of capitalism. At the end of the day, Goldwater's defense of capitalism was religion. But by the end of the Bush administration, there was nobody to defend capitalism. I mean, it was Bush and a Republican House that passed massive legislation to bail out banks and to do all this anti-capitalist stuff. And, I mean, this is from the right. So it can't be capitalism is good. Yeah, Harold just says that he just listened to a David Frum on a podcast and he completely blames the financial crisis and deregulation. Absolutely. I mean, they don't know what they're talking about. What deregulation? But that's what they blame it on. So the financial crisis knocked out the second leg of the stool. And what happens when you have a stool with one leg? It falls down. And basically, the conservative movement was left with social conservatives, with religion, and nothing. And that's the void into which Donald Trump stepped in. He stepped into that void with a Pat Buchanan-like populism that appealed to the religious right, and of course he appealed explicitly to the religious right, and turned it into a bar stool, established one big foundation for it. The Blue Dogs are not Republicans, the Blue Dogs are Democrats, the Blue Dogs are centrists, the Blue Dogs are not conservatives. Wanda Freeman keeps asking about the Blue Dogs. Blue Dogs are not conservatives. So they're not part of this, right? They are moderate Democrats and centrist Republicans who are kind of for smaller government, not limited government, for smaller government. They were Democrats, now they may be Republicans, but they're not conservatives. They don't consider themselves part of the conservative movement. So what you got in conservatism now is basically one stool with one leg. And that one leg combines religion, social conservatives, with nativism, with leftist economic policies. So free markets have been abandoned completely. And we get Pat Buchanan type economics, which is pro-industrial policy, pro-central planning, pro-programs to help the working class, pro-tariffs, pro-trade restrictions, pro-walls, anti-immigration of all kinds, complete disengagement from the world. And that's conservatism today. That's the national conservative movement. That's the new right. That's the post-liberal right. You know, historically, liberal means pro-liberty. Liberal meant pro-individualism. Liberal meant we trust the individual to live his life as he sees fit. We just create order. We defend, protect his rights, and leave him alone. That's what liberal has always meant, classical liberal in today's world. And what the right today is anti-liberal, post-liberal, illiberal, right? Illiberal. And that's where the conservative movement is, and that's where the electorate is. That's where they all are. Now, I want to show you a graph. I'll show you. Let's see if I can find this. There we go. See this graph? So this is a graph of the 2016 electorate. In past elections, I don't have graphs to show this, but in past elections, so red is Republican, blue is Democrats. The x-axis, the x-axis goes from -1, which is, I guess, complete statism, communism, complete control by the government, all the way to +1, which is complete laissez-faire, right? Laissez-faire economics. And the y-axis is on social policy. So -1 is, I guess, everybody has to be transgender. I don't know, but complete, complete liberty when it comes to social practices. And +1 is the government dictates your gender, I guess, and whether you can't get divorced even. Divorce is illegal, and certainly abortion is illegal. So this is the social. Y is social, X is economic. And historically what you'd find is the upper left corner would have the fewest number. And the most of the dots congregated around the upper right and the lower left. Democrats were the lower left, Republicans were the upper right, and some Democrats were in the upper left because they were socially conservative in spite of being pretty socialist. So Democrats were there. Some Republicans were in the lower right, so they might be, socially liberal and pro-free markets in the lower right. That's historically. What you're seeing here is a complete emptying out of that bottom right corner, that pro-free market, that call it libertarian corner, and not just free market, but individualist corner. That is the idea of leaving individual free to both pursue their economic interest and their social interest. That corner, the corner where I consider myself to be, is empty. There's almost nobody there. And the corner that has suddenly got superpopulated by both Democrats and Republicans is the authoritarian corner. It's the corner of we want to control you socially and we want to control you economically. And that's the upper left-hand corner. And that is the political transition that's happened in the United States. It's emptied out the free market, emptied out voters in the free market corner, and moved them to the left. I found this, I got this graph in an article by Patrick Deneen, who is a new right, illiberal, really, really bad guy. But, he's the leader, one of the leading intellectuals of the anti-classical liberal view. Yeah, we've got some of them. Anoka says individualism is gay and cringe. That's pretty gay, Anoka, whatever the hell that means. Notice individualism. Individualism. Individualism is bad in America. So he says among his students, Patrick Deneen says, that traditionally a third were progressives, a third were, Republican fusionists, upper right-hand corner, and a third were libertarian. And he's taught at Georgetown, at Notre Dame, at Princeton. He's at Notre Dame right now. And he says he probably got more kind of conservative students because he is known as a conservative, right? That's not called humor. That's called, so James says, boomers. It's called humor. No, that's not called humor. You young people have no concept what humor actually is. So he says this year, he's got a third Republican fusionists, upper right. He's got a third progressives, lower left, and a third what he's calling post-liberals, upper left. Anti-free markets, anti-social freedom, which is where he is. He says, and hardly a libertarian in the room. So that was a long introduction to the point that free market ideas are losing. The statists of muscle and the statists of soul are winning. The people who want to control both your mind and your body are winning. The people who want to control you in the bedroom and the boardroom are winning. Call them the new right, the new left, the whatever, the religious left, the religious right. They're the ones winning. Yeah, one of Freeman says, sounds like Russia today. Yes, and it's not an accident that these people adore Putin. They adore Orban. They adore those autocrats, authoritarians, who restrict their people's economic freedom and restrict their people's social freedom, because that's the dream they have for America. Most of them happen to be Catholic, and they'd love to bring about some form of Catholic theocracy to us all, but they'll take whatever they can get. How did this happen? Now, I told you sequentially, in a sense, how it happened. But why did it happen? Simon, thank you. Really appreciate that. John, thank you. Cheers to you too. Why did it happen? Why was it so easy to get rid of the, quote, libertarian, the free market types from the conservative movement or from the electorate altogether? Well, I don't expect objectivism to win. Why have more softer forms not won? Why a free market idea is losing? And I think the reason is that without objectivism, without Ayn Rand, without a moral code of individualism, without a moral code of egoism, there is no passion behind the arguments for free markets, and there's no ethics. There's no moral case for capitalism. I've been talking about this for decades. Of course, Ayn Rand talked about this. Lenin Peikoff talked about this. Objectivists have been talking about this. And we're seeing the consequences. That is, the pure economic arguments, even though they're all true, even though they're all right, don't convince. They don't make a dent. And as soon as there's a problem, and the left blames it on capitalism, and people are suffering, and it's hard to disentangle the mess, people just flock to the anti-capitalist perspective. For decades, for 200 years, really since Adam Smith, the pro-free market side has been trying to justify capitalism on the basis of altruism, on the basis of sacrifice, on the basis of the common good, the public welfare. And then you get a financial crisis, and the public good is not good anymore. And yes, if you're a good economist, you can untangle it and see that it wasn't capitalism that caused it, but we need somebody to defend the public good. So if you defend it on altruism, you are going to lose. What about the poor? And what about those greedy businessmen who we know greed leads to lying, stealing, and cheating, so we have to regulate them? What about those poor? We know those greedy businessmen will not support them enough to keep them alive, so we have to have a welfare state. You can't defend capitalism and altruism. Capitalism is self-evidently, as Adam Smith understood, about self-interest. He waved a magic wand and made self-interest into socially acceptable, but not moral, not ethical, not virtuous, not noble. And our job is to make self-interest noble, virtuous, ethical, praiseworthy. And only then can the free market side win. But there is another element that I want to mention today, and then we'll call it a night, and I'll take your Super Chat questions. There are a lot of them. There's another element. It's not just altruism. It's also that over the last 100 years, over the last 200 years, really, since Immanuel Kant, Western civilization has engaged, the intellectuals in Western civilization have engaged in a systematic, non-stop attack on human reason. Whether it was Kant or Hegel or Schopenhauer or Marx or Nietzsche, certainly Nietzsche, or whether it was the postmodernists, the critical theorists, and now the critical race theorists, or whether it's the religionists. The one common feature of intellectual life is a constant, steady attack on reason. Reason is man's faculty to identify and integrate the evidence of his senses, the facts of reality. And as a consequence of that, people don't trust their minds. They don't trust themselves. They don't trust their neighbors. They don't trust anybody. And what this has opened the world up to is it's opened the world up to the philosopher kings. It's opened the world up to the Platonists stepping in and saying, you shouldn't trust yourself. You shouldn't trust each other. You can't trust science. You can't trust anybody. But you can trust us. We have the right philosophy. We have your interest in mind. You can't take care of yourself because you can't trust your own mind. You can't take care of yourself because your senses deceive you. You can't take care of yourself because reality is complicated and you just don't have the ability. We do. We do. And people complain about the political elites of the left, but it's the same thing on the right. I mean, Patrick Deneen doesn't want you to take care of your own life. He wants you to be guided by him to take care of your life. He wants you to follow scripture. He wants you to follow commandments. He wants you to follow a social agenda, an economic agenda that he, the central planner, will dictate to you because he is an expert. I mean, it's easy for us to complain about the elitists of the left, but it's exactly the same elitists on the right who want to run everything, who want to control everything. They all get their knowledge from some kind of mysticism. Some of them give lip service to reason, and some of them don't. Some of them are more honest. All right, where do the Catholics get it? Well, they get it from scripture, they get it from God, they get it from tradition. They all want common good conservatism, common good constitutionalism, common good socialism, common good central planning, common good. The only way to challenge this, the only way to fight this and win this is to fight it and win it on the terms, on the idea that reason is powerful, reason is efficacious, that reason is our guide to knowledge, that reason can lead us to truth, and that all of us have that capacity. That every individual can take care of himself, that every individual can reason, every individual can discover the truth, that every individual can evaluate the evidence. The only way to change the trend towards authoritarianism is to declare, no, you can't think for me. You can't make decisions for me. And that can only be claimed if we have a theory of the efficaciousness of reason, if we have a theory of the universality of reason. And as long as we embrace religious magicalism, or whatever you want to call it, religion, broadly, or we replace religion with some other form of knowledge that only some people can get through revelation or through reason, we're moving towards authoritarianism. There's just no way out of it. Adam, thank you. Thank you. Today's politicians, no reason. This donation, no reason. Thanks, Adam. So this is the thing about free markets, about so-called libertarians, about the free market movement. Unless it is willing to defend reason and egoism, it cannot win. Unless we're willing to launch a revolution that's pro-reason. Philosophical revolution, not an economic revolution, a philosophical one. We won't win. Unless we're willing to declare moral revolution, to throw out altruism, we can't win. And the fact is, I know the libertarian movement, I know all the free market thinkers, they're not willing to do it because they don't believe in it. Many of them in the United States are religious. Many of them hold on to altruism and won't question it. Many of them hold on to Kantian or other views of reason. Ayn Rand has given us the playbook. We have the playbook. Her ideas can save the world. They really can. The whole world, everywhere. And unless we're willing to embrace them and fight for them, not for some watered down version and not for the antithesis, the populism of the new right, free market ideas won't win. They lose because they're not backed up by philosophy. They're not backed up by defensive reason. They're not backed up by defensive egoism. And look, ideas shape the world. And bad ideas will shape it when people are not willing to fight for good ideas. Or when people are not willing to embrace good ideas. They're there, right? And people are not willing to embrace them. For whatever reason, psychological, historical, whatever the reasons are. So it's depressing when you see the state of the world we're in. But it's liberating when you understand why it's in the state it is. And the more you understand why and what needs to be done to change it, what can be done to change it, I think the more inspired you become and the more motivated you can become to actually fight the fight. So thank you guys for joining me in that fight. But we keep on fighting, we keep on trying. And by the way, this is why I get so frustrated with somebody like Jordan Peterson, right? He's smart. And yet, his mumbo-jumbo in epistemology undermines reason. Even though I agree with him on certain issues, the mumbo-jumbo in epistemology undermines the case for reason, and by undermining reason, he undermines everything. And then it's not surprising they can't really defend capitalism because he said there's no such thing as self-interest. He doesn't believe in self-interest. He doesn't believe there's a self. He has a whole little spiel. I did a video on this once. So it's so frustrating when you find somebody who's really smart and he's got some views that maybe you agree with, and yet he undercuts the defense of capitalism, the defense of reason, and therefore the defense of Western civilization. All right, everybody. Let's see. Okay, let's jump into the Q&A. We've got a lot of questions, a lot of $20 questions. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Troy, again, for easily getting us over the $600 mark. Troy gave 500 Australian dollars earlier, so thank you, Troy. We are somewhere into 700 and something, 730 $734 maybe, $734. So we're doing great. Keep it coming. No questions under $20 just because we don't have the time, and I've got so many questions lined up. So, but I'll keep taking questions of over 20. If we want to start February off with a bang, we can keep going financially and get the numbers up there. We got that great push from Troy earlier. All right, I'm just going to go down these questions in the order that they arrived, but skipping over the ones that are not $20. Michael asks, I don't think free market ideas are losing. They're just not spreading fast enough at the moment. The left is coming after podcasts now. They know the internet is breaking the university stronghold on the intellect. I don't see the left going after podcasts. I don't know what podcasts they're going after. Certainly where they're succeeding, I don't consider them going after Joe Rogan, them going after podcasts because of free markets. And Joe Rogan, as I showed in the clip the other day, is far, 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 far from free markets. He's a Bernie Sanders guy. So Rogan is not on our side on the free market issue. So the left going after him is not. I do think absolutely free market ideas are losing. 10 years ago, free market ideas were much more popular than they are today. I think the number of objectivists is increasing, but the number of people who believe in free markets is definitely on the decline. We started to see that in 2016. Donald Trump did more to eviscerate free market ideology among people than anything ever. I mean, it started with the financial crisis, but Students for Liberty saw declining numbers, and I think still sees declining numbers. Generally, interest in, quote, libertarian free market ideas has been on a decline. And again, I showed you the graph. Voter numbers, anecdotal numbers of students attending classes. There's just less people overall interested in capitalism, real capitalism. There's more people interested in objectivism, but we're still very, very small. Very, very small. Let's see. Michael asked a lot of questions today. Do you like the German movie Downfall about Hitler's last days in the bunker, and why are the Germans always apologizing about World War II, but the Japanese don't think they did anything wrong even to this day? I don't think I saw Downfall, so I can't really comment on the movie. Germans are always apologizing because of the Holocaust, and because, remember, the Germans don't live on an island. The Germans live in the heart of Europe. They basically slaughtered their neighbors. They slaughtered many people in their own population. They slaughtered people who belong to nations and groups that they want to be friendly with today. And so they're constantly apologizing because it's constantly real, it's constantly in their face. Japan is an island. It's an isolated place. It doesn't have borders. It doesn't allow immigration. It has tourism, but it isn't culturally engaged with the rest of the world and people from the rest of the world in the same way Germany is. It can be and has remained much more isolated culturally and much more isolated in their own world. I think if Japan was bordered China and was much more, or bordered South Korea, I think they'd apologize a lot more. But this way, there's a certain distance between them and the Koreans and between them and the Chinese, where they can afford, in a sense, not to apologize and not to make it kind of a whole culture around what they did. I also think the Holocaust, because it was committed in the West by a Western country to people living in the West, was elevated in people's consciousness, in history books, in movies, in everything. Everybody grows up with it. It's part of our culture in a deep, deep, deep way. And the rape of Nanjing and some of the atrocities that the Japanese committed in China and in Korea have just not had that cultural resonance. China had other things to worry about after World War II. South Korea had other things to worry about, including a war with North Korea, to worry about right after World War II. Germany was integrated back into the culture of Europe, and therefore is an integral part of that, and its crimes are part of that history in an integrated sense that touched all those other countries around it. Japan's history is still separate, and they're just not held to account in the same way. Just not held to account in the same way. All right, Michael also asks, do you think in a fully objectivist society, people will be in school for as many years as they are now, or will the average guy go to something like a code academy for 3 months and be able to make a living? Yeah, but maybe, but I think they would be in school. School would be different. School would be very different. I'll answer all the questions, Rom, so don't worry. I'll answer your question. I'm just going to answer them at the end of the show. Sorry if you have to wait up late for that, but I'm going to answer all the $20 questions first, and then I'll answer the under 20, but I won't move it to another show. I'll make sure I cover them all today. So, no, I mean, I think it's really important to get an education, to get a broad education, not just to learn a skill, not just to learn a job. I think a liberal art education is really, really crucial. And I think high school should be providing real liberal arts education. You should know history. You should know something about economics. You should know English. You should know literature. You should know these things. And I think that would become more important, not less important, in an objectivist educational system. I think there would be more trade education. I do think there would be more professional education, but you can't just go to trade school you can't just go to a boot camp to be a computer scientist. You can't just go to trade school to boot camp to be a scientist more broadly. There's huge value to these things. Now, how education is delivered, how education is consumed, how all that will work in the future, all of that is going to be disrupted by technology. It's all going to be disrupted by in a truly free market. Who knows? I'm the last person who tries to predict what a free market would look like, right? In such a world. All right, let's see. So education would be different, but I still think it would be crucial, including all the skills you learn in primary school and in high school. Harper Campbell asks, to what extent has your speech impediment slowed the growth of objectivism and your show? I don't know. You guys tell me to what extent my speech impediment, to the extent I have one, has slowed the growth of objectivism. I suspect zero. I suspect zero for show as well. I suspect that people who won't listen to what I have to say because they don't like my accent are people who wouldn't be attracted to objectivism anyway. So, but I appreciate the, the attempt to insult. Let's see. By the way, that was an insult to all of you guys too, because all of you guys are listening in spite of my horrible speech impediment. I don't know how you can tolerate it. Liam asks, are you a sensitive person? Would you say you're good at reading people's body language, facial expressions, and feeling their energy and mood? I am not a sensitive person. I don't think. And sometimes I'm good at reading people's body language and facial expressions, but I'd say overall I'm not. Certain types I'm better at reading than others. But no, I mean, my wife is much better at that than I am. No, I'm not, and I'm not sensitive generally to. I often kind of completely miss things that are going on with other people out there. I don't have a speech impediment. I have an accent that many people don't like, and many people like to make fun of, which is fine. You know, it's childish, but so be it. It primarily stems from just the accent, the combination of a Boston accent where I lived when I was in high school and picked up, and a South African accent, which I spoke at home. My parents have a South African accent. So I grew up with English and Hebrew as kind of co-languages. And there were periods in which I spoke more English, periods where I spoke more Hebrew. I never really became a master at either one of them. In terms of vocabulary, in terms of I don't have a very good vocabulary, which I think actually helps me as a communicator. But I don't have a very big vocabulary as a verbal communicator. It hurts me in my writing. It's very hurtful in writing to have a limited vocabulary. But I grew up with two languages at home. And I forgot my Hebrew at some point because I also spoke Cockney at some point. I had a Cockney accent when I was 6 or 7. That's pretty funny. Daniel wants to hear me speak Hebrew. Just come to an objectivist conference sometime. If my wife is here, you'll hear me speaking Hebrew to my wife. Jeffrey Miller asks, I arrived late. Have you spoken about the truckers in Canada and Trudeau in hiding? I have not. I have to admit, I haven't been following the truckers in Canada or Trudeau in hiding, so I need to catch up on that story, and I'll talk about it in the future. Let's see. OMG Puppies says, Scott Adams about COVID has been saying February 1 we are done. Who is we? California's not done. Florida's been done for a while. Texas is somewhat done. Different places have been done. Some places are not done. We should be done. Even the left. What's his name? Yegelis, or the guy's name I can't pronounce, who Tucker Carlson insulted in a ridiculous fashion in my segment that I did on Tucker Carlson. Even he is now calling for, we're done. It's finished. Let's get it over with. Biden, just announce it's over. So I think people are sick and tired. They're done with it. There's still a section in the population that's afraid. It's a section of the population that might always be afraid. We just have to, Barry Weiss says she's done. We just have to get over it. I've been done to some extent from the beginning. I've been traveling. I've been speaking throughout. So, I've been wanting to just get on with it from the beginning. So, but it's people have not let me. Joao, thank you. Really appreciate that. Brazilian real. So thanks. And wow, there's $20 super chat questions just rolling in. Catherine is having a grand time of things. She is really enjoying herself today. I think 1,000 is very reachable today. Very reachable. All right, where are we? Let's keep rolling down with the questions here. The $20 questions. Okay, Darian says, will humans forever be at the constant state of defending individual liberty against tyranny? Is it inevitable for us to always fight with each other? No, I don't think it is. Maybe I'm utopian in this sense, but I don't think it is. Look how far we've advanced, right? There's so many, even the worst authoritarians today, not the worst, but even bad authoritarians today, allow so much more freedom than Middle Ages society allowed for. Even in the Enlightenment, to say you're an atheist was very dangerous. Voltaire had to escape, I think, to Geneva because he was considered an atheist. And that's Paris. Paris in the 18th century, he had to escape and go to Vienna. I don't know why Vienna. That's an interesting historical. I'll have to look at that because Vienna was Calvin's Vienna. Not Vienna. Geneva. He escaped to Geneva, but Geneva was Calvin's. You'd think there'd be less religious tolerance in Geneva. So that is a good question historically. So we've come a long way. Joel's there. Now I see the question. I will copy it over and answer it. I don't know how much 279 real is. Maybe somebody can do the math and let me know. But okay, I've got Joel's question. Thanks, Scott, for alerting me to that. So no, I think that we've come a long way. I think that a lot of our individual liberty and our individual freedom is already taken for granted. And that's, in a sense, that's part of the problem, is that we take it for granted. You know, I go around the world and ask people, who does your life belong to? You can do this anywhere, in Asia, in Africa, in Europe, in Eastern Europe, anyway. And people say to me, to themselves, that wouldn't have been true 200 years ago. It would have been to the church, to God, to the state, to somebody else. So it would be interesting. So there's a sense in which we have much more liberty, and we've won many battles that I think are almost impossible for the bad guys to undo. And now we need to keep pushing and keep getting the whole package. And the whole package is going to be around reason and egoism. And that we've never had. We've never had a culture of egoism, a culture of reason. We've come close on reason. We've come moved a little bit on egoism. You know, I'd say America in its first 100 years. And that was amazing. Imagine now with Iran's philosophy, if we had 100 years of that dominating and that being understood and that being permeating into the culture and being developed and applied, and an educational system, you know, built on these ideas. And imagine all of that infrastructure existing. Then I think that we wouldn't have to fight anymore. I think it would be over now. Would we still have to be vigilant? Yes. Aware of dangers? Yes. Willing to fight? Yes. But I think once we can get to a point where people have this respect for reason and respect for egoism, I think they'll look at tyranny as some barbaric, ridiculous, absurd thing of the past, as Americans did up until recently. So I am optimistic in the longer term that we don't have to keep fighting the same old battles over and over and over again. We can get this done and get it over with. All right, Joel's question, which was a $50 plus question. What do you think about meditation and the intention to disidentify with a little self in your head to an understanding of your entire conscious experience as your true self and that sort of thing? So I think all of that is BS. I think that's a technical term. You know, so again, I'm not against meditation. But I'm against attributing to meditation the idea that by shutting down most of your mind, by in a sense true relaxation, you can somehow discover greater truths about yourself and greater truths about the world. Indeed, you will discover nothing about the world, because the whole point of meditation is detaching from the world, and that's fine for relaxation, for clearing your mind, for making it possible for you to be better focused later on, for making it possible for you to be better engaged with reality afterwards. So I'm not against meditation at all. I know many rational people who meditate. I know many people who are objectivists who meditate. And I don't, because I find that to the extent that I succeed in achieving the state which people view as meditation, I just fall asleep. And I find that the equivalent of meditation that I get, which is real real relaxation of the mind, real clarity, in a sense of real focus on self, all of that. I find when I listen to classical music, when I really listen, right? When I've told you, turn all the lights off, jack up the thing to 11, and just let yourself completely be immersed by the music, and let your mind, your consciousness just focus on the music and the variety of techniques to do that. That's, I find, when I reach the closest thing to, I think, what the meditative state is. But I've never been able to meditate, even though I've tried. I think music gets there, because I think music goes directly and it's a you have the ability, and this is why turning the lights off is so important, because what you want to do is eliminate all your other senses, and leave yourself open to only one sense, and that is the sense of sound, the sense of hearing. Right? So all you have is sound, and the volume high so that the sound immerses you, so that you don't let your consciousness drift to focusing on anything else in reality. So now all it is internal. Now you have to silence the mind about, what happened today and all that stuff. And you've got a way to silence it by, instead of focusing on a mantra, on the thing to be repeated, you now focus on the music. Now, I don't know if that's meditation. I don't know if that's the same thing. But again, I have tried and I can't meditate. So this is what I succeed in doing. So, it's a beautiful experience. It's fantastic, and it's refreshing in a way that almost nothing else is. But I don't buy the you learn more about just no. It's just a form of clearing your mind. And now in music, you actually can learn a lot about yourself, because you learn about your emotional responses, because you're allowing yourself to respond emotionally without filtering from your mind. You're allowing yourself just to embrace the emotion that the music invokes. And that is a learning experience about yourself. So there is a sense in which you don't get the calmness that maybe meditation gives you, because it depends on the music. There is music that will invoke calmness, that those are the emotions that it'll bring forward. But anyway, you guys who meditate know more about this than I do. Okay, Michael, why are hierarchies so important to conservatives? Hazony and Jordan Peterson always emphasize them. They have this survival of the fittest lobster mentality they think is the natural order of things. Yes, because human societies have always been structured hierarchically. And hierarchy historically has always been somebody putting their boot on your throat and a lobster stepping on one another. And that's pre-capitalism. Pre-capitalism is a world in which I need to step on you in order to survive. And hierarchies are determined by physical force. Hierarchies are determined by my capacity to step on people's throats. And they view the world, because they're conservative, because they're focused on history, they still view the world through that prism, through that perspective. The perspective of a pre-capitalist kind of world, but really a pre-reason and individualism world. What capitalism has shown us is that there's a different type of hierarchy, but that hierarchy is not important. Hierarchy in a sense of embedded anything, hierarchy in a sense of physical force, hierarchy in a sense of putting a boot on somebody's throat is not important. What is important is ability, effort, focus, creativity. What is really important is the activities of the mind, its production. That doesn't create hierarchies, because hierarchies assume somebody exploiting somebody else, somebody guiding somebody else, somebody telling somebody else how to live, somebody ruling over others. And Yoram Hazony longs for a monarchy, longs for an aristocracy. If you read his articles about conservatism, he longs for an aristocracy. What he doesn't like is common people living their lives like they see fit, because he thinks they're sinning, and he thinks they're wasting their lives, and he thinks they're not living up to their potential. And he wants the aristocrats. I mean, again, it goes back to Plato, the philosopher kings, to be much more engaged in guiding the lives of the masses, in dictating how they should live. And they long for a kind of feudalistic world in which you didn't get to decide whether to spend 2 hours watching pornography today, because your masters told you can't. You're not allowed to. They shut it off. And if you Watch Hazoni. He talks a lot about pornography because it's an expression of people doing something that he thinks is really horrific and really destructive, and he wants to stop you from doing it. He doesn't want to convince you to stop doing it. He wants to stop you from doing it because he doesn't believe that you are capable, by use of your own reason, to stop yourself. All right. Let's see. Next question. But it's very important to conservatives that some people are better than others, and that betterment doesn't necessarily come from achievement, which is sad. Ali asks, everyone wearing masks in California, even outside or inside, their own cars, which is insane. Shops are half open with no seating inside, some of them at least. I mean, it's just absurd. California is just pathetic. I'm so glad I'm not in California. Well, in Orange County, it wouldn't be like this, because I'm sure Orange County, nobody was wearing masks, even at the height of COVID, outdoors in Orange County. And a lot of restaurants were open. Even when they banned indoor dining, they were open for indoor dining. So a lot of people ignored the stuff in Orange County, but the rest of California is just a ridiculous place. Michael asks, a sociology professor said to me, quote, when Republicans say don't go to college, learn a trade, the message is to learn to love being an uneducated slave to the wealthy. Leftists cannot view any kind of manual labor as legitimate. And yet they're trying to protect the working class. That's why the working class is all shifted to the Republican Party, because the Republicans are now the party of the working class. But again, they're not the party of the working class because they admire the working class. They're the party of the working class because they don't admire the working class. They think the working class needs their protection, needs their help, needs their assistance, needs their welfare. The Republican Party's become, and in that sense, they agree with the left. But look, I am a big believer in getting a liberal arts education, and as many people should get it. I think it's incredibly valuable to living your life. Maybe not to what you're going to do in life, but to living your life. Learning history and philosophy is very valuable for people. And literature, I would add literature to that. And having a semblance of an understanding of science and statistics in a world that we live in today is valuable. And if you have a very low IQ, maybe low intelligence, then maybe that's too much for you, and just get a trade, and that's fine. But I wouldn't put down our liberal arts education. Adam asked, there's a great video on YouTube of Thatcher giving her rebuttal in Parliament to the wage gap. Yes. I mean, there's a bunch of great videos. I mean, she knew her stuff. She was a student of Hayek, so she knew the economics. She was much better than Reagan in that sense. She really understood and knew this. Michael asked, when are you having Peter Schwartz on? Soon. And to what extent did high IQ play in discovering objectivism? Well, it can't just be honesty versus evasion. I think a lot of it's honesty versus evasion. I don't know. I don't know how intelligence plays a role in it. I think there's certain intellectual honesty and courage. You have to have courage. And I think intelligence helps you to have courage. You have confidence. It helps in the sense of self-esteem. But I've known people who are not that intelligent who are objectivists. And yeah, they might not dig into the epistemology and they might not dig into stuff, but they get it. They understand it. They love it, and it's enough for them. They don't have to get the philosophy fully, and it's enough. But there's probably a bias in the world in which we live today towards more intelligent people, because that intelligence gives them the confidence to stand up to the rest of the world saying to them, you're wrong. Curiosity is a huge factor. Yes. Curiosity is one of the characteristics of new young objectivists. All right, I'll just mention that we are so close to $1,000. It would be really cool to just get to that round number. So we need $40 to get to $1,000. We're at $960. If somebody wants to jump in and do that, that would be terrific. Oh my God, puppies, OMG puppies. I worry about woke stakeholder capitalism, ESG scores, World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab seems like Rudge niche of the super rich. Yeah, I mean, I worry about all of that. I don't so worry about, I mean, Klaus Schwab, he's not going to be successful in what he's doing. The World Economic Forum is bad and has bad ideas and propagates bad ideas and all of that. But ESG is a real, so I think all of those are bad and they're spreading bad ideas. They're not going to take over the world. It's not going to be the great reset exactly the way they lay it out. They're not going to be the new authoritarians. But ESG is going to move us towards authoritarianism. ESG is like the Chinese social score. Companies get a score. Investment houses get scores. Your investment portfolio will get a score. And ultimately, you will get a score. So the whole stakeholder capitalism ESG scores is very, very, very dangerous, very, very, very scary, and it's destructive to capitalism. It's destructive to freedom. It's destructive to ability to make money and to succeed in life. It's going to destroy our economies. It's going to reduce profitability in businesses, reduce innovation, and all of that is bad stuff. And it increases social monitoring. It increases the role of government and other institutions in monitoring our behavior. And now, with social media and phones and all this stuff, it's easy to give us a score about, what we say, what kind of communications we do, who we listen to, what kind of podcasts. That's, once we finish giving scores to all the companies, and we're not quite there yet, right? There's a lot of resistance to that. If you look at ESG portfolios, they look exactly like non-ESG portfolios because people still care about returns, so they don't actually want to take ESG seriously. But it slowly progresses towards that. It slowly moves in that direction. We're still a way off from a ESG becoming a true social score, but we're heading in that direction, and it's very, very dangerous. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Theme Master. You guys have just put us over the $1,000. Really, really appreciate it. Let's see, Dave. We still got a lot of Super Chat questions. Yeah, quite a few. Where's Dave's question? It's over here somewhere. Dave says, I think AOI is too dismissive of short video clips. They clearly work and will attract high-quality intellectuals who won't be exposed to these ideas in classrooms and won't click on an 80-minute podcast or something foreign. It's not going to, there's no way to know if it's going to attract high-quality intellectuals. It attracts people. It attracts numbers. So you're playing a numbers game. The good thing about short videos is it's large numbers, and then some of them are attracted by the short video, and then some of those are going to be attracted by longer videos, and then some of those are going to be, in some tiny fraction of those are going to become intellectuals. And you've got to play a numbers game, and there are lots of ways to play numbers game, short videos being one of them, but there are lots of other ways to do it too. The Books for Teachers programs that we do, the talks we do all over the world are part of that, but and short videos are part of that, and the Institute has, over the years, produced short videos. Right now, the emphasis of the Institute, which I think is right now, is, because you can't do everything, is to produce great new intellectuals. It's to get people to take a deep dive into the ideas once they've been exposed. It's to develop people who really have a deep understanding of the ideas, and to help them flourish as intellectuals out there in the space. And those intellectuals will then produce short videos, like I produce short videos. I think the most valuable thing the Ayn Rand Institute can do is produce new intellectuals. Nothing comes close to that. And then those new intellectuals will do podcasts, will do short videos, will do long videos, will do seminars, will do everything else. We'll write books, we'll all the wonderful stuff that you guys think will save the world. Those intellectuals will do it. It doesn't have to be AOI. AOI needs to set the foundations, the groundwork for all that. Okay, Michael asks, did you ever consider going into physics? No. If we had a respected objectivist physicist who can do podcasts, we could change the culture much faster. Agree, we don't. And physics was way too abstract for me. And it doesn't interest me. I mean, there's a level at which it still doesn't interest me. Like astrophysics doesn't really interest me. It's kind of cool, kind of interesting, but I'm not about to read a book about astrophysics. Biology interests me. I'm much too focused on things that are affecting my life right now in this world. So no. Michael asks, is London more vibrant and capitalist than New York City? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. But it's more cultured than New York City. It's got more culture than New York City. New York City has a lot. London has even more. More museums, more concert halls, more opportunities for culture in London. But that's because it's Europe. And Europe has a lot more culture and a bigger market for culture than the US, than New York does. It's also in some ways, I don't know, yeah, I think that's the main point. I don't think it's more vibrant and capitalist. I think New York is more vibrant and capitalist, but London is certainly up there. All right, Ashton. Don't worry, Yaron. The use of reason and the works of Aristotle, Thomas Aquinas, Ayn Rand, along with objectivists, shall never fade away. As long as I'm alive, I will fight against mysticism, altruism, dogma, and evil. Thank you, Ashton. And we value your support and the fact that you are going to be fighting alongside me and other like-minded individuals. Okay, also Ashton, this time for $50. Do you think the teaching and ideology that Noam Chomsky produced and spouted caused the radicalization of leftists today? I personally think he is the most destructive intellectual to Western civilization today. Yeah, I think he is today. I think because he was so well regarded, because he was a linguist of such high standing, his ideas had a massive influence on so many young people over the last 50 years. It's astounding how successful. So he's the one intellectual alive today that's had this profound influence. I think John Rawls was probably more destructive than Noam Chomsky, but he's, of course, not alive. And, of course, Noam Chomsky is just a product of the Franklin School and the postmodernists and the Marxists and all the bad ideas that have been a part of the culture and a part of the world in which we live. And he's just one of the expressions of that. But he's a particularly evil guy. Bad guy. And super smart. Super smart. All right, Richard asks, I think populists and leftists are willing to surrender their autonomy in exchange for taxpayer-funded benefits like welfare and healthcare. I agree. If you agree, how do we fight that mindset? The only way to fight it is philosophically. The only way to fight it is with the idea that what they're doing is self-destructive, what they're doing to their own lives is self-destructive, that they should value their lives, and it might not be possible to fight them. We might just have to replace them in the sense of investing in young people, not investing in the older people that already completely internalized these ideas. That's why I think we should always invest in young people, because there you can change minds. And once people have completely embraced the welfare mentality, I don't know that you can change that. Make them fall in love with individualism, I don't know that that's possible. But if you can catch a 20-year-old or an 18-year-old, you can certainly do that. James asked, Tui is academic left-wing. Is there a major character in Rand's fiction that is an evil right-wing religious character? There was, but you cut him out of Atlas Shrugged. One that reflects the view of the right wing as the greatest threat. If not, why not? No, there isn't. And the reason is that in the 1950s, when she wrote Atlas Shrugged and when it was published in 57, the right was benign. The right was, religion was in decline. Religion was not a major force in American culture. I mean, Ayn Rand didn't think it was that important back then. She changed her mind in the 1970s. And I think the villains would have been different if she wrote the book in the 1970s. She didn't think the right was going to have that much importance. She didn't think the right was going to be the greater evil. And neither did Leonard Peikoff, right? It was all about the left. Ominous Parallels is all about the enemy of the left, right? Although it ends up with fascism, which you could argue is the right. But it's all about the cultural influence of, in a sense, the leftist philosophers, the ideology of authoritarianism. So I just think the world has changed. And she didn't see the rise of religion again until the 70s. And she didn't see, and the Soviet Union was still around, and all the intellectuals were leftist, and the right-wing intellectuals were better than they are today, much better. So, yeah, she didn't live in the world as we live in it. You have to take her ideas and apply them to what's going on in the world we live in, which I try to do. It. Maybe she disagree with everything I say. I don't know. I hope not. I don't think so. Jeffrey asks, with schools being a hot issue, now is a good time to read the chapters about education and Return of the Primitive. Absolutely. There's some great chapters about education and the Return of the Primitive, which is a book Ayn Rand published. It was republished after her death with the name Return of the Primitive, edited by Peter Schwartz. Jeff Bannister says, buying some new 4K movies, is The Wolf of Wall Street any good? I mean, it's a decent movie. I wouldn't invest in I mean, I would watch it, but I wouldn't invest in like buying a Blu-ray or buying it. I would rent it and watch it. Probably not worth watching any more than once. If you want the one on finance, the best movie on finance is Other People's Money. That's worth watching more than once. All right, Thomas Schubatum asks, last $20 question. It seems like a significant number of people are prepared to be prisoners of COVID forever and keep the rest of us with them. You hear that we might always need to wear masks on airplanes and have lockdowns every winter. I don't think that's going to happen. I think sanity will, I mean, Thomas, you live in California, maybe that's the attitude, but the rest of the country is fed up with this. There's already a lot of pressure on domestic airlines to eliminate masks. I think you're going to start, some countries in Europe are eliminating all this stuff. It's going to be very difficult to keep this up if the rest of the world is not doing it and nothing bad is happening, and nothing bad is going to happen. So while there are people advocating for this, I don't think Americans will actually tolerate it once hospitalization is insignificant. And yep. All right, let's see. 3 last questions. Ram, finally I got to you. Sorry about that. Riding a motorbike is a lot risky compared to a car, so does it make it immoral? No. If it is moral, as I assume the risk, then what I assume the risk of drugs and do it anyway, what's the difference? Well, it depends why you're riding a motorcycle. If you're riding a motorbike for no good reason, and you could be driving a car, and you know it's risky, but there's no reason, particular rational reason for which you're riding the motorbike, then it's immoral. The immorality reflects the rationality of the decision. But if, for example, you can't buy a car, and a motorbike is your best way to get around, or if you love riding a motorbike and you've accepted the risk and you know the risk, you understand the risk, but it's fun, then that's fine. Just be really aware of the risks that you're taking and make sure that the fun is worth it. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't ride a motorbike. But it really is a question of how much you've really evaluated the values within the context of your life, and how much fun is it versus the dangers involved. But drugs in any case are different. It's not that you're not taking drugs because they're risky. I don't take drugs because I don't want to mess with my mind. I don't take drugs because I don't want to, I mean, the most important thing I have is my brain, biologically. And I don't want to screw it up. I wouldn't take a mind-altering kind of drug unless I had to, because I don't want to screw it over. Right? So it has nothing to do with the physical damage. It has more to do with, you know, you can survive a motorcycle crash. You can't survive damage to the brain. And most, you know, you can't, not all motorcycle crashes can you survive. Dean asks, people are scared that you go. People are scared that you go viral because when objectivism would stop being a cool niche thing, you're an indie intellectual, you're on. And when I say people, I mean myself. Haha, rational. I'm happy though. Don't be scared. As viral as I go, it's never going to be viral, so viral that it won't be cool to listen to the Iran Book Show. It'll still be the in kids who are listening to the Iran Book Show. Colt Savage, best name, best handle on my chat, has the last question. Unpopular opinion, but I think the way you speak is actually pretty cool. It really distinguishes you from a lot of other people. At least you don't have a Southern accent like me. Oh, well, I appreciate that, but you know, Colt Savage, with a name like that, you should have a Southern accent, right? It goes well. A Texas drawl, right? I never picked up the Texas drawl, although I can say y'all when I lived in Austin, Texas. So anyway, thank you, Colt. I appreciate that. And I appreciate all of you listening, both live and after the fact, and on the podcast and on YouTube. Thank you all. You know, my accent is what it is. You know, I could change it. I could invest a lot of time and effort to better pronounce the letter R. And in Hebrew, you pronounce it R, so it's R, or I don't pronounce it in English. But I could probably find a nice middle ground. I just haven't put the energy and time into it because it's not that important to me. I don't think it matters that much. And, you know, the fact that you guys all hanging around suggests to me that it's not that bad. All right. Y'all. Y'all is plural and singular. Y'all. All right. Thanks, everybody. We had a great day. 1,000 and what? 1,000 and something. $1,086. So that's great. Really appreciate it. Great way to start February off. And you know, we're going to try to stick to that $600 every show. Even though it's a short month, we want to make it a good month. I'm here. I'm home. I think most of the month. There is some possibility of a little bit of travel, but I'll try to do shows while I'm traveling as well. Those have been working the technology. The Wi-Fi in hotels has improved dramatically, so we can do shows from the road quite well. Let's see. Remind everybody, particularly those new to the show, that you can support the show on Patreon or Subscribestar on YaronBrookShow.com/support. Please don't forget before you leave to like the show, give it a thumbs up. That helps with the algorithms. And even those of you who don't like short videos, please go to the 1-minute videos and just share them. It's a great way to get my message out there, to get people who might like stuff. We're going to release a bunch more this week and next week, and just share them. Let's see if we can get some exponential growth here in viewership, in time spent, and in subscribers, and ultimately in support for the show. You know, the more money we get in support of the show overall, the more time I can dedicate to this versus other things. So thanks, everybody. See you all. Today's Tuesday. We'll see you all on Thursday.